Come scrapbook with me while I talk about Vocaloid Fukase. Fukase is a bilingual Japanese and English Vocaloid. He released January of 2016. But we knew about Fukase in summer of 2015, where Yamaha had announced they were making a Vocaloid based off of the lead singer of Sekai no Owari. Sekai no Owari is a popular Japanese band. Initially, we didn't know much about Fukase. In fact, we didn't even know he was going to be bilingual until much later. Back in the Vocaloid 3 era, it was pretty commonplace for Vocaloids to have their designs picked by the fandom via a contest. This bled a little bit into the Vocaloid 4 era, where Fukase is from, as he was actually designed via a contest. Out of like 40 runner-ups, Mikuma was the winner. The original design that Mikuma had pitched was a little bit different from the final one that we know. Namely, his face was symmetrical and there weren't many veins on his body. That sounds strange out of context, but it's Fukase! Unfortunately, Fukase was not very popular with the Japanese crowd. On the other hand, though, he was very popular with the Western crowd. As far as I've been told, there's not really much of a community surrounding Fukase in the Japanese side of things. At least not in the same way there is here in the West, where Fukase has a bit of a cult following. It very much so helps that he is bilingual. Fukase was made by Yamaha in collaboration with Tokyo Fantasy. Tokyo Fantasy is the management group behind the band Sekai no Owari. As for what I could find on Tokyo Fantasy, they seem to be a pretty small group of about 7 people that may or may not have changed since they've last posted any information, but that's as far as I know. It is notable that Fukase is really popular with Western producers, except for the fact that he has kind of a complicated license. Okay, so each Vocaloid has their own unique contract or license, a product license. Usually they're along the lines of, don't use this Vocaloid to sing ridiculously inappropriate songs. Many of them have contracts where you can't actually use the character themselves commercially, but you can use the voice bank commercially. Fukase is all of that. You can't use his character or his voice commercially. If you want to do so, you actually have to contact Tokyo Fantasy. They have a dedicated email for that. And then you sign a contract with them, and you have to send a certain percentage of your earnings to them every few months. Now, I had a friend who did this. He sold charms and standees of Fukase, and I did get to see the contract myself. My friend paid about 15% of his earnings every 4 months. I don't know if that's for all contracts, but that was what he did. But this contract really scared a lot of producers. And it's understandable why, when the vast majority of producers are extremely small. And Tokyo Fantasy wants you to wire the money in a very specific way, and it can be really inconvenient. That being said, the license did deter a lot of people. Like, I think Fukase would have had a lot more widespread usage, especially in the West, if he didn't have that license nonsense happening. I mean, I also understand why Tokyo Fantasy did it. They want to protect the image and the voice of the voice provider. But we also know that Fukase did not do well in his first year. We don't know if he failed or succeeded, but we know he did not do very well the very first year. He did not sell enough copies, basically. Not enough people were buying the software. Again, we don't know ultimately if he failed or succeeded, but it didn't look very good. As for the license agreement now, it's really complicated because Tokyo Fantasy no longer responds to emails. So even if you wanted to commercially use Fukase, it's impossible. Hell, even Yamaha can't even get in contact with them. It's really bizarre. Although I've never actually seen Tokyo Fantasy go after anyone. The whole thing is just bizarre and really unfortunate. Fukase has no canon age. Although it is notable that Mikuma's art style at the time had a lot of baby-faced characters. Like, I had seen Mikuma's art prior to Fukase, and almost all of the characters that they were drawing had baby face syndrome, which personally led me to think that Fukase was older than he appeared. And since then, Mikuma's style has changed a little bit, so no longer does he have baby face, at least in Mikuma's fan art. Also, Satoshi Fukase, the voice provider, sounds very young. I thought he was like 16. Nah, bro was like 30 when he recorded Fukase. I also know that the recording process for Fukase was kind of a hellhole. It took 2 weeks to record the voice bank, and he had to record each sound 100 times. It was so bad he had to like pretend it never happened. It was actually expected by the devs that Fukase's English voice bank would not sound very good. Although, personally, I think they did a great job. Like, yeah, he sounds like he's singing with food in his mouth. But so didn't half the other English Vocaloids at the time. Just one more thing he had in common with Oliver. Anyway, Fukase is one of my favorite Vocaloids. I hope he makes a return someday, but I'm not counting on it.